All right, hey guys, I'm back with my 2027 Commissioner predictions for the VBL season. For this video, I'm going to jump into the NL Mendoza division. Truth be told, I don't know where my notes went for this video and the next one, so I'm just going to I have how I want things to lay out in terms of the predictions, but I don't have my notes per team. Don't know where they went, but I think as we go through each team, it should be pretty clear why I feel the way that I do about each team's potential outcome. So without further ado, I'm going to just jump right into my last place team in the Mendoza division. All right, so last place, I've got the Vancouver Lynx, expansion team. This is year 4 for them. As you can see here, they've been in, as most rebuilding teams are, deep rebuild. Last year, only 45 wins. Honestly, this team isn't as bad as a 45-win outcome makes them look. The trouble is this division is absolutely stacked. So when most of your opponents are really good, it's hard for any rebuilding team to get to that. I look at 60 wins as kind of like that benchmark for a rebuild. So yeah, they won 45, and yeah, they're going to struggle this year, but they're not as bad as they look, as their wins make them look, I should say. So here's their offense, sorted again by OSA. Not a ton here. Nothing that's really going to scare any of these top teams. John Stone didn't have a great year last year, but he's probably their best player. In terms of power supply, most of their power is actually on the bench right now to start the year. So it looks like Michael Webster is, at least as of opening day, their top power guy in terms of overall ability. You can look at Carlos Perez. These are guys that are just going to get this team through. Ultimately, from a lineup standpoint, there's not a lot here. There's some speed right here, but they're just not going to score a ton of runs. With the pitching, best pitcher is Eugene White. He's a young reliever. He's not awful. He's just nothing really too exciting. Their number one, Bravo is their best. I guess there's a bunch of 2.5 stars here, but Bravo is rated the best via OSA. But their number one starter is Gonzalez here. Mid-5 ERA last year. 10-11 record, which is pretty good for somebody of his talent. But, overall, as I'm going to get into the other teams, this team just can't stack up right now. The good thing is I don't think that they're trying to stack up right now. So I set their over-under at 49.5 wins. All right, let's bop over to the next team here. All right, next up, I've got the DC Teddies. This is a team that has struggled recently. I think that they hit kind of a moment where they thought the rebuild was done, but then the other teams kind of, went by them quicker than probably expected. So like right about here, they've been in that low 70, mid 70 range. 80 wins is their top mark since, 2017. So I think right now this team's just trying to figure out the right formula to compete with the top teams in the division. But, they've proven that they're capable of doing so. Here they won the championship in 2012. They won the championship in 2003. They've had some playoff appearances. They just need to get back to figuring out what works for them and what's going to stop the top teams in their division. Looking at the lineup, you've got Haywood Jones at the top. Good player, not great player, not great on defense. Lawrence Summers, again, good catcher. He's getting a bit old at 34. But, these two being your top 2 offensive players, you're going to get the kind of output that you would expect here from this lineup. There is some power here with Marks and Orr, but again, low contact. So you're talking about Whether or not that power is going to translate. The good thing for Marks is he's not going to strike out a ton. So, his contact is pretty low, but he's not going to strike out. So it gives you a better chance that power number is going to come through when the bat hits the ball. Overall, I looked at defense too for them. You go from Orr down to Wilson, and you've got some not great defense. So that's going to hurt, especially, again, I know I keep harping on it, but you think about all the teams in the division, you got to stop them from scoring runs. And unfortunately, I don't think this pitching staff is really going to do it. So if the pitching staff's not good enough to do it and the defense can't help, it's going to be a struggle. Manuel Vasquez is a really good pitcher. I was surprised to see that he wasn't their number one. That might have just been, something based on spring training or something, but Eddie James is their number one. He's a good pitcher. He's probably like a 3-4 type. Vasquez is probably like a 2-3, but he's obviously their best. We talked about this with, I think it was DeGrom on another video, big stuff, but that movement at a 52, Vasquez is going to get beat up by the home run ball probably more times than they would like. As you can see here, he gave up 27 home runs last year. That's pretty high for a number one type starter. Actually, I just noticed that it's his own performance that he's angry about. You look at the bullpen, you go from Grant down to McGee, and you've got not very good pitchers, to be honest with you. So this is another team kind of like Vancouver, where I don't think they're as bad as their record's going to show, but because of the level of competition that they have to keep up with, it's going to be a tough year for them. And I've set the over-under for them at 56.5. All right, next up. All right, so next up, I've got the Brooklyn Bats. The Bats are a team that they've been in rebuild for a while now. 2020, they won 103 games. And then 72, 76, 71, they've just been in that low, 450 win percentage type mentality for a while now. And this kind of goes to show, too, when you've got that team, that team that can win 100 games, 95 games, sometimes it's best to just try and figure out ways to stay there rather than just do a rebuild. Sometimes money's just not in your favor and you just have to make that tough decision. But you can see here, ever since their rebuild started, so 2021, this team has lost a lot of money. That's probably just quick math, almost 20 million that's going out the door that they're not able to use for players. So that's a huge aspect of this league. You got to be able to turn a profit any way you can. So seeing that makes it just that much harder to rebuild. Going to their team, Malcolmson is a really great hitter. I don't think he really put up the kind of year that I would expect. I actually thought he'd be better than a 281, 321, 562 slash, but still like really good. So that's not anything that's a problem. Tatis Jr., I think he's another player that just hasn't really been as good as expected. That's not to say a 4 WAR is not good, but I don't know. I expected him to be more superstar mentality, and a 746 OPS, that's not superstar numbers. So, if Tatis can kind of play to this profile, that changes things a ton for Brooklyn. And I actually think he's going to have a good year. Everything points to the fact that he should have a good season. Paul DeJong, Dwayne Lee, Morales, these are good players. This is not a team that's destined for, just struggling all year. It's just, again, as I've mentioned over and over, I know they're playing against really excellent teams. So, this core right here, the 24 through 27, this is a good core to build around. There's no problems here. Defensively, they're all right. The problem is the depth, right? The lineup just doesn't have the supporting cast to make those 5 guys be the best that they can be. So if Brooklyn can find a way to upgrade center field, get a better catcher, I wouldn't worry so much about left field. I've said that before. Maybe you find it, if you're weak in left field, at least be strong defensively, which they are. Um, but they're weak in key areas: center field, right field, catcher. They fix that, then this team could actually compete. I don't know if they have enough to compete for the playoffs in this division, but I think that they can compete for above 500. Looking at their pitching staff, Jabba is still one of the best on their pitching staff, but Josh Hader is the guy right now. But the problem is, like other teams that are in this position, you have a pitcher who he's there to close out late inning close games, and Brooklyn might not be in that position. Interesting thing about him in terms of OSA is his movement and control are not great, but he appeared in 57 games last year. He put up a 1.3 WAR. He's been a good reliever. Is he a excellent reliever? Probably not, but he's definitely good enough, and he's somebody that you hand the ball to him. If Brooklyn's got a lead, you at least feel pretty good about your chances. The rest of the rotation is probably about average, I would say. Nothing really exciting. They've got good stuff. They are probably going to get beat up by the long ball. They're not going to give up a ton of walks. So really, it's about whether or not they can get those big strikeouts, keep the ball in the park, and then whether or not this defense is going to keep these pitchers to perform a little bit better than perhaps they normally would. Based on the park and the defense. So I don't have a lot of problems with this team. It's a nice team. It's a team that's going to give Brooklyn reason to want to follow, Brooklyn fans, I should say. And overall, I've got them at 77.5 for the over-under. All right, now we're going to get to the interesting part of this division because to be honest with you, it's a really good division, and I've got 5 teams that I think are going to really be in the mix here. So I'm going with Toronto to be kind of the first ones out of the playoff race. And, the Redbirds are kind of finishing up that rebuild. They went through this tough stretch right here, 58-50, 60-59 wins. 83 the year after, 88 last year, but they played like a 92 win team. They turned money hand over fist right here during the rebuild, which is what you want to see, as I just talked about. Let's take a look at their lineup. That lineup's really good, right? You have your top 6, 7, almost the entire lineup is 3.5 stars. It's funny that David Summers is 3-star guy. It's probably more about his defense, but offensively, he's going to hold his own. Looking at the speed, this is a pretty important aspect of this team right now. They've got good speed. Flores being their superstar, Flores is the guy right now. Flores is Toronto's management, their favorite player, obviously, and with good reason. He's put up back-to-back 6 WAR seasons. He was an international free agent, so that worked out. But the other thing to note here is, like a lot of our really good teams, is the age of these players helps a team build, because right now they know they're set for a while here. They're in the low 20s for most of their good players, outside of Moran and Bob here, Stolfus. I've never really known how to pronounce that. They're all in their low 20s, mid 20s at tops. So this team is going to be around for a while. Now it's about how do they bring in pieces to kind of complement the team and to bring out the best of the talent. If I go over to the pitching, though, the pitching's probably where they're weak. They're going to have the lineup that's going to be able to keep up with the rest of the lineups in this division. The pitching staff, in some spots, they're going to definitely keep up, right? So Shoemaker is probably on his way to becoming one of those elite starters. He's done back-to-back 3.5-ish WAR seasons. This is the year that we kind of hopefully see whether or not Shoemaker is that top number one guy. Maldonado, for the last 2 years, he also has been very reliable, not big in the control department, as you can see. And those are the things that kind of just kill teams like Toronto. That is an aspect that, if I look at, so this is mostly bullpen right here, right? So walks are going to be a problem for this bullpen. And then I think it was stuff. This team is big on stuff. This team, their worst stuff is Jose Diaz at 77. So this team is going to strike you out. So you got to be prepared for that. You got to have the lineup that can manufacture runs and also avoid that strikeout, obviously. But, if you let them strike you out, they're going to beat you. But if you have that kind of lineup that can work a count, get on base through a walk, and then, kind of make things happen, that's how you're probably going to beat Toronto, assuming you keep up with their lineup. So I would say this lineup is why they're going to win games, and the pitching staff is how they're going to lose them probably. It's not going to be a bad year, I don't think, in Toronto, and I've got them at 90.5 wins. All right. So next up, so this is the fourth place team. So these are the guys that are just going to miss the playoffs here. I've got the Cosmos. So Stratford had a really good year last year. They won 100 games. They finished third place, that's the insane part about this division is you win 100 games. Congratulations, you're in third place. They've been a really good franchise, right? So they've had some up and down years. They have dominant years here in the low 100s. Then they take a few years off, and then they're back again with mid 90s, 100, 90, and then 2 years of kind of laying low, which is funny because they won 86 games but finished in second place that year. But this is a really good team. It's just, again, really good division. And I think at this point, even including Toronto, when you're picking a team to not make the playoffs, I don't think you're really insulting anybody because it's going to be really hard to make the playoffs. Again, Stratford, it took 100 games for them to finish in third place. So saying somebody's in fifth place with 90 plus wins, I don't think is really an insult. But, just like Toronto, this lineup is stacked. It's probably a little bit better. It's a little bit more dynamic than Toronto, I would say. Good speed, really good defense. Let's see, the power, you got 4 power threats, 1 on the bench, so 3, let's call it. But these guys are going to be able to hit too for power. Contact, this team's going to put the ball in play. They're not going to walk a ton. You go from here, you got 6 of their guys below average eyes probably. But again, they're putting the ball in play. They're hitting for power. They're hitting the gaps too, and then using that speed to take advantage of the gaps. It's just a really good lineup. There's nothing bad to say here. I would say, I remember making a note. Yeah, so shortstop, again, Torres, not a bat that's going to, excite you, but he's an elite glove, right? So this is when having an elite glove with no bat is going to pay off. And I mean, to be honest, his bat's really not that bad. It just hasn't played. He 706 OPS. It's not very good. If they can get an 800 OPS out of him plus this glove, that's really great stuff. Center field, they got I would call him Lay, right? Maybe, I don't know, but they got him in a trade this winter, so they're taking a risk here. But he was a 3.3 WAR player for Winnipeg, and again, he's not as strong in center field. I have to see if they're starting him there, but the bat is really good, and they're not trying to draw walks. They're putting the ball in play. So they have a really good lineup. They know who they are. They know what they need to try and win games. Where I think they might struggle is probably in the bullpen, as is the case. I feel like I've been saying that a bunch, but let's start with why they're going to win games. Esparza is an ace. This guy is an elite number one type. He won 22 games last year, 7 WAR. You give the ball to him. I don't care if he's facing Moyer, whoever. You feel good about your chances to win that game. Fotachi has had a really interesting career. He's with Bugaboo and then Winnipeg, but he's good for about 3 WAR. So, not a typical ace type guy, but somebody that you can feel confident in. Velasquez, another one, right? Like, he's young. He's a little bit like Esparza in terms of his talent and the movement and control not being such strong suits, but 6.5 WAR last year. How can you complain? So 1 through 3, Stratford's got a chance to beat you. This is where things get a little concerning, right? Is David Kennedy ready? The profile says yes. If the profile and the AAA performance happen, they're in a good spot, right? But we don't know. He only appeared in 2 games last year, so we're just going to have to wait and find out. And then I'm not even going to try to, or actually I am going to try to pronounce it. Ambarizio? Sure. Another guy, straight out of the minors. He had 1 appearance in 2026, so we don't know. Profile's good, right? The stuff is there. Movement is pretty weak. Control is good enough. One thing, though, that I wanted to point out was, with Kennedy and Esparza, they're going to have to hand the ball over to the bullpen a little bit more than you would like, right? So when your ace has that low stamina and then maybe your 4-5s are a little bit weaker, that might cause some strain on the bullpen. We'll just have to wait and see. But Barth is elite when it comes to being a closer, right? 32 saves last year, 3 WAR, 0.56 ERA, 0.7 WHIP. You hand the ball to him. If they get to that point, they can feel good about their chances to win the game. But the interesting thing about this bullpen is, you go Davila, who was a starter last year. He's now in the bullpen, so we just have to see how he does. He was basically a 2 WAR starter last year. If they can go Davila to Berth, that's an excellent 8th, 9th inning type situation. Where they're going to struggle is right here. Mendoza, Sawyer, Levy, Valencia, Vargas. These guys they're going to cause some strain on Stratford. They're going to make the offense have to do a little bit more later in games than they would like. There's not a lot of stamina here either. So, when they are throwing, it might be day off, day on. But to be honest, I think I'm splitting hairs when I'm predicting some of these teams. And if this team makes the playoffs, nobody should be surprised. And I've got them at 93.5 for their over-under. All right, so next up would be our 3rd place team. So first one's into the playoffs. I'm going with the Fighting Bananas. The Bananas are an excellent team, even if management doesn't believe it. But look at that. I mean, the results don't lie. 2018 through last year, 90 plus wins every year. They have not missed the playoffs since 2017. This team, again, has found their identity. They know what works for them. They may like to tell people that their team's not that good, but their team's pretty good. All right, let's look at this lineup. I mean, Bailey and Diaz, you got 2 5-star talents in their prime. Diaz 27, Bailey 31. How can you go wrong, right? De La Garza and Glenn, 2 really good players. De La Garza did not have a good year last year, though. He was a 1.5 WAR. The interesting thing here is his contact probably kills him because he's in the mid 50s for his contact. And you can see here his average has been, 240, 233, 234. He's the kind of guy that, he's going to be hit or miss. He's going to walk a ton, which is nice. His speed probably doesn't make it as worth it. But he's a good player. Nick Glenn is a great player. He just doesn't hit for power. As you can see here, 6 WAR last year, 20 home run power. So this guy is going to hit the gaps, not strike out, put the ball in play, use that speed to make things happen. As you can see here in his stat line for the last 3 years, he's been basically good for 6 WAR every year. In terms of the gaps in the lineup, Fullerton at second base, he's had a decent career, nothing that's awful by any means, but he's like, a 2 WAR type player, which there's nothing wrong with that. He's got good defense, so he'll play fine there. I don't really know what to expect here. Again, Randon kind of fits the profile of the type of player that you see Savannah have success with. He's essentially, I guess, in some ways, replacing Wright, who went to Nashville. He's got a similar profile, no eye, really, no home run power, but he's going to slap the ball all across the field. He's going to catch everything and anything that's around him in the field. And so we just have to see how he pans out. But, this is a lineup that's very complete. They don't rely on home run power a ton. Where they need their home run power, they get it from guys like Steve Bailey, guys like Jose Diaz, but they're just going to smack the ball around the field. They are going to use this speed to beat you. And then also they have, decent defense. You got 5 guys over 60 in the defense, but the pitching is not as good as probably Stratford, maybe even Toronto, because I think what they're missing is like that top echelon guy, but they're kind of just figuring things out right now. You look at the age of this rotation, you got Flaherty, Wilkerson, Cedarberg, and Gore, all 25 or under. So they're just kind of figuring things out. But one thing that this team is not lacking is stuff. This team's going to strike you out. 80 stuff being their worst is that's pretty good. In terms of movement, they're not going to give up a ton of home runs. They aren't going to give you free passes. So you got to be able to, excuse me, you got to be able to just beat these guys. And again, they're not flashy. They don't have a big ace. They don't have those Esparza types. They don't have the big time closer, although, McEnroy is really good. I just don't know if he's as good as Berth. But he put up an excellent year last year. So, I look at the pitching staff. I say they're good enough to keep up with anybody in the division. They're probably not an elite pitching staff, but this is the kind of team that could go out and find that type of, top number 1 guy. If they do, they're going to be exceptionally dangerous. But right now, I would just say they're a really top-notch team that with their offense and their style of play, they're going to make things really difficult for everybody in their division. And I've got them at 96.5 wins. All right, so second place. All right, second place, I've got the Austin Big Stars. This is a team that is kind of starting to find its way with its fan base. They're starting to make money here. They made $1 million last year. Their fans, they had the most fans that they've ever had since, we'll call it 2016, right? That's a long time. So they've had some good years, 4 years here, 92 wins, 84, 82, 84. They've made the playoffs 2 of those years. They're kind of just starting to threaten the top teams in this division, and I've got them in second place, so I must think pretty highly of them, right? Lineup's really good. Look at this. Vlad Jr. is, by OSA standards, he's their 6th best offensive player. Not a bad place to be because Vlad Jr. is pretty good. Pedro Delgado, though, look at that profile. That's a profile of a superstar. Great personality. Good enough on defense, especially for left field. He put up a 6.7 WAR last year. He is just an absolute stud. Combs is another really good player. He relies a little bit more on his defense to kind of make him that top-notch player, but mid 800 OPS, 4.5 WAR last year. He's just another excellent player. Griot, I looked at him. I actually, to be honest, I didn't really notice him much last year. Offensively, 750 OPS, but again, another really great defender, which is kind of a trend here because if you look, this team can play defense. So when you have teams like Savannah or other teams that are like fast and putting the ball in play, this is how this kind of team is going to beat them, right? They're going to keep pace with them for the most part offensively, but they're gonna keep the runs off the board with great defense. They've got some power here. Top 4 guys here are 80 plus, so this team will hit some home runs. They will make those low movement pitchers really pay, and they also have some really good speed, both on the bench and in the lineup. These guys obviously aren't bringing any speed. Delgado basically just walks around the bases, but when you're hitting 30 plus home runs, I guess you can just get away with that. If I go to the pitching staff, Rick Snow is the guy. He's that top echelon ace. Look at that profile. Can't say anything wrong. He's a captain. I mean, what are you going to say wrong here? 68 control, sure. He put up a 7 WAR last year. This is the guy. He might be the best pitcher in the NL. And last year he was just a rookie, so this is going to be the guy in Austin for a really long time. There's obviously a drop-off after that, which you can expect, but Stan Combs he's been pretty reliable for this franchise. He doesn't have the profile of like a really top pitcher, but he's good for 4 WAR every year for them. And again, he strikes batters out, and this pitching staff knows that when they put the ball in play, their defense is going to kind of save them. So I would say, again, not the best pitching staff. You got a couple of guys here that you can really count on, but then these guys here, they're all going to count on this defense. And they're going to need it because some of them aren't very good. But I look at Renteria. He performed really well last year. I don't think he was in the closer spot all season. He only had 10 saves, but you get that profile to play in the 8th and 9th inning, and that's how you win some really good games. And he's got the stamina so that he's not going to be wasted, on, off. So I have here their over-under. I've got them at 98.5 wins because I think that it just works. I think that this system is going to play really well in this division. I think that they just have a lot of talent. And I'm just excited to see how they do and if their fans come out and support them. All right, so that leaves us just with the division winner. And the division winner is our defending champs, the Cooperstown Camels. I mean, we were talking about Savannah. Same thing, right? 2020, this team turned the corner, and they have not looked back since. They bring in money. They bring in fans. They've got it all figured out. This team is an elite VBL team, and it's going to take a lot of work to stop them. But you look at how some of these teams are building to compete with them. You look at Austin, defense. Those are the kind of things. It's not you might not be able to just outslug a team like Cooperstown, but if you can find ways to maybe keep pace and then keep the runs off the board with good pitching and really great defense, that's how you maybe cut into their division dominance. If we look at their lineup, I mean, Bellinger, Chapman. I mean, this offense is ridiculous. Let's just put that out there. So it's going to be a struggle for a team like, say DC or Brooklyn to look and say, okay, well, how do we win the division? You might just want to figure out how do we get to 3rd place and then just roll the dice from there. But I mean, this team is so good. Look at this. Xander Bogaerts is not starting on opening day, and he's a 4.5 star talent. That's ridiculous. Lindor, MVP caliber. Maybe not as great with the bat, but the glove is just perfect. They're just so good. I mean, what if you look at this lineup? Like, what's the thing that you look at and you're like, okay, well, that's the guy that we're going to get out. I guess Scott Byrne, his 310 batting average. So like, look at this, 3.3 WAR. This is their weak spot. This is what you have to look forward to. If you can, you're like, okay, well, if we can just get to Scott Byrne, it's insane. This team is really good. They do have some age in terms of VBL, right? Like VBL is very mid 20s. So you look at, Turner, someday soon, he's not going to be this dominant player. Franco, Lindor, they're going to hit a point where they need replacements. The problem is for Cooperstown opponents is that they have a lot in the pipeline. So you're going to have to really get creative when you're trying to beat teams like Cooperstown. And, defensively, they've got it all figured out. It's just ridiculous. This team is very good. So it's no wonder that they won the championship last year. We go to the pitching. Pitching's not, what you would expect for the championship team, right? But again, kind of like Savannah, they are very similar. The stuff is elite. The movement, really good. Control. They're not going to give you anything, right? So you're going to have to beat these guys. Fletcher had a great year. There was that little issue where he was hurt and then he wasn't. It happens. But 6.6 WAR last year, 0.93 WHIP, just insane stuff. That's the profile of an ace. And then the problem for everybody else is they have Lee Myers, who, OSA's got him at 4-star. Sure. Look at that profile. Anybody who says, I don't want that profile on their team, you're a liar. 6 WAR last year. They've got 2 guys at the top. And then, oh, by the way, they've got one of the best pitchers to ever play in this league in Madison Bumgarner, who posted a 5.7 WAR last year, 20 wins, 1.87 ERA. Like, it's insane. So you're going to go and play Cooperstown in 3 games, and then what? You're going to be excited to face one of these 3 guys? It's bad when John Lambert is the guy you're like, oh, if we can just get to John Lambert, right? 17-14 record, which is comical, 5.5 WAR. It's insane. And to be honest, they don't have a great bullpen, but they don't really need one. They just have it all figured out right now. They're in the prime of their franchise. The question is going to be whether or not the teams in their division can break down the wall and also kind of wait out this team. They're not, like I said before, Bumgarner 35, Myers 29, Lambert 27. They're not a very young team by VBL standards, but they do have a core of really good young talent, like Fletcher at 24. And then we go back to the offense. You go and you're looking at Byrne, Chapman, Sanchez, Bellinger, all 25 or under. So this team's going to be around for a while. It's just going to be whether or not they get the most out of this core right now. And again, you look at their record here. They have 2 championships in the last 4 years. It's going to keep coming. This team is very tough, I should say. And I've got them at 105.5 for their over-under. So I have, just to recap, I've got Savannah playing Austin in the playoffs. And then their prize is that they get to play Cooperstown. And I will be back with the final division. But I appreciate you all watching this, and I hope you enjoyed it.